In a traditional classroom, success is tied to compliance. You sit down, you memorize the approved facts, you take the test, and you move on. The system rewards those who can accurately repeat what they are told, leaving very little room for genuine curiosity. I grew up struggling in exactly that kind of environment. Navigating schools like this one, I felt alienated by standardized exams and the constant pressure to find the one correct fixed solution. That deep sense of disengagement lasted right up until I walked into an architectural design studio. There, the rigid rules were gone. Instead of a syllabus demanding the right answer, I was handed an empty site and asked to explore. Architecture required questioning the premise, observing the environment, and testing multiple iterations to see what actually worked. It reversed how I engaged with learning. Education stopped being a passive act of receiving existing knowledge and became a process where I constructed my own meaning through the work. Years later, that perspective traveled with me when I relocated from Hong Kong to London, moving from my role as an architectural project designer to becoming a university lecturer. But that career move came with a real tension. I was stepping back into a highly structured institutional system, and I had to figure out how to teach within it without turning into the rigid authority figure I used to resent. I realized that my job as an educator is to act as an architect. This diagram represents the actual design brief to create 3 specific overlapping environments where learning can happen: the physical, the emotional, and the reflective space. Students only truly grow and discover their own agency when all 3 of these environments are deliberately designed to support one another. Let's start with the first dimension, the physical space. This involves breaking down the typical rows of forward-facing desks and transforming the classroom into an active design studio. In this physical layout, a sketch pinned to a wall serves as a live, cognitive language. It is a way of communicating and working out a problem together in real time, rather than presenting a finished, flawless product. That physical engagement extends to making things by hand. By prototyping scale models and testing structures, students are intentionally making mistakes and immediately refining their ideas based on what fails. This methodology demands participation. By physically creating the work and seeing the immediate results of their decisions, students develop a sense of ownership over their progress. In this newly designed physical layout, the classroom acts as a laboratory where students actively construct their own understanding of the work. But a physical studio requires an invisible foundation to function, which brings us to the emotional space. If you ask a student to iterate, prototype, and make mistakes, that process will collapse if they feel terrified of failing. To build that safety, I use a strategy of controlled distance. Instead of standing at the front as a strict instructor, I operate as a senior peer, stepping back just enough to allow the student to lead the project. I rely on this approach because I remember what it took to get me through my own studies. A former mentor looked past my early academic struggles and gave me a chance, an act of grace that allowed my hidden capabilities to finally surface. Before any drawing is made or any model is built, the most crucial architectural material you have to establish in the room is trust. The final dimension is the reflective space. This addresses a major internal tension for any educator, balancing clear structure with creative freedom. I initially struggled to reconcile the intuitive, playful nature of a design studio with the university's demand for strict rubrics, measurable learning outcomes, and formal assessments. To resolve this, I turned to intellectual frameworks like Stephen Brookfield's 4 lenses and Donald Shawn's model of the reflective practitioner. These tools allow educators to constantly analyze their teaching and map out clear paths for their students. Viewed through this reflective loop, assessment stops acting as a harsh final judgment. Instead, it forms a well-designed structural boundary, protective walls that safely guide the student's exploration. The counterintuitive reality is that clear institutional structure doesn't restrict the studio. It creates the safe, defined space required for true creative freedom to flourish. As a lifelong Liverpool Football Club fan, I often think about a phrase their former manager, Jurgen Klopp, used to describe the team's long-term transformation, moving from doubters to believers. That concept captures my educational journey. I started out as a frustrated student who doubted the entire system, and eventually transformed into a confident educator who believes in the process. That kind of transformation requires a mentor who is willing to play the long game, someone who trusts the process even when things inevitably fail. Education, at its core, is a continuous act of persistent togetherness. It is the slow, deliberate work of turning doubt into belief. By applying this same iterative logic to my own career, I've developed a vision called We Prototype 3 Learning. It's a method where I treat the curriculum itself as a design project, using the same prototyping tools I teach my students to refine the classroom environment. Under this model, we actively use peer observation and direct student feedback to evolve the module and the studio space every single semester. This architectural approach to the classroom is tied to how I view teaching as a whole, an ethical, relational calling where work serves a higher purpose. Ultimately, these physical, emotional, and reflective designs serve a single purpose: the formation and growth of the people within them.